in those events and all over the world, we focus too much, or we focus a lot on the company, on the business, on the startup, on the venture, right? But we usually forget that the company is just the reflection of the person who founded it, or who managed it, or who is the decision maker behind this company. And therefore, in Startup Grind, we stress out the people behind the company, or inside the company, or the ones who founded it, or made it a reality, made it a success. This is Startup Grind. Startup Grind right now exists in 200 plus cities. This is Takeom's co-working. We can explore it after the actual grinding with Matiss. We're gonna go to that part of it. We're gonna have wine, water, that's where fun begins, right? Right, and we're gonna explore the place all in all. But that's very important, you know, to have the right environment, very motivating and kind of creative as well environment. Do you like it in here?
Yes.
Yeah, you like it as well?
For sure, man.
For sure. Cool. So, on this note, let's give a warm welcome, warm Startup Grind welcome to our today's guest, who is a long hip-hop fan. Unfortunately, I can't hip-hop. Otherwise, we could, you know, try it and film a clip or something. So, a huge hip-hop fan of extreme sports, founder of one of the fastest growing fintech companies, fintech startups in Europe, and the guy whose mission is to inspire people, us, through entrepreneurship. So, warm Startup Grind welcome to Matiss Ansviesulis. Very cool, very cool. And hey Matiss, how are you doing?
Good. Are we talking English?
Yeah, we do.
All right. Who's in the audience that speaks English as their first language? All right, so we're basically speaking English for one guy, huh? You better learn Latvian though next time. But again.
Yeah, we do it in English, and for Austin obviously, and for the guys who can see us through the camera, because it's not live stream for now, but you're gonna see yourself on the Startup Grind YouTube channel. Yeah, that's for you. So how are you doing? What's up?
Very good. Very pumped to be here. It's the first time I do an interview like this, so very, very excited. Usually we have, if I participate on a panel where there's a few people, so there's not that much attention to me, you know, so I'm in a vulnerable position.
I see, of course. And how many are we? Like around 50, so 102 eyes on you.
I expected, you know, like 7 to 10 people would be a spectacular outcome. So this is just like, you know, I won't ever forget it.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
My mother was, and maybe still is, a teacher. Yeah, was a teacher and a psychologist. And my father was sort of in business, but basically he was a manager of one of the top managers in a large construction company. So I've had this sort of exposure to business a little bit from my father's side, I could say, from early days. And then one of the sort of vivid, call it ambitions or targets I had back when I was in primary school was to get into the best school in Latvia, which is, at least in my opinion, but in opinion of most people, is the Riga gymnasium. So it's basically maths-focused school. And I tried to get in, and so I'm telling this because this kind of forms a big part of how I do things. You know, I'll get back to it later. And so I was trying to get into this school when I was in the 6th grade, because it's a gymnasium, so it admits people on the 7th grade or on the secondary school to the 10th grade. You can get into that school, you know, either on the 7th grade or the 10th. So I tried to do it, you know, for the 7th grade, and I couldn't pass the maths test, and I cried like a lot. I remember like crying like a baby, like a lot. I was going through the preparation exams, like a maths, you know, preparation course that took like 9 months for, you know, you to prepare for the exam to get into the school. So I failed that, and then 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I was continuing to practice, mathematics, English, and things like that, in order for me to pass the same test for the 10th grade admission to the school, which I did. So I basically, like, the way I did it was not from talent, but I learned by heart approximately like 12 years worth of exam results, because there's this little book that they give out if you want to prepare by learning from the previous exams, and they give you the answers. But in the exam, in the new exam, there's always like, out of 10 questions, there's like 2 questions that are very fresh and very new for that particular year, so you can't learn everything, right? But you can learn at least 80 to like 85%, which I did totally by heart, like all the versions, etc. So there's literally like statistically very little chance that I would fail, and I didn't. So I got in to the 10th grade. That cost me, like some hair and, back then, and so the thing that I learned was, I don't know how functional it is, but the thing I learned that if I really set my mind to something and with an enormous effort and kind of dedication and perseverance, I can probably achieve like most of the things. But because for me back then, getting into this elite school in Riga was it was a big challenge for sure. It was like major, yeah. Do some sports, then of course I want to be #1, but it's not like completely obsessive. It's not like that.
Not anymore?
To some extent in some areas, yeah. I mean, if I do feel like a person is more capable in a certain area than me, which I care about, let's say, I don't know, like an entrepreneur, which is the best comparison for me, right? That he's better skilled in people management than me, I will, it will switch on my competitive spirit. So I will work harder on myself to match that level. And that just happens like, it used to happen completely subconsciously. Now I kind of I can manage it because I'm aware of it. So yeah, I mean, my time in the school, in secondary school, was great. One thing I realized very quickly is that I cannot compete on the grades, so I had to compete on attention. Again, fairly honest, yeah? As in, so in the primary school, I could be the best or kind of the best in my class, at least in terms of grades. So I accomplished my mission of being the best. In the secondary school, we had these fucking weird geeks, that dedicated their lives to get the best grades, and I wasn't that obsessed. And so I kind of chose a different battleground, and the battleground was just getting attention. And I was wearing like extremely vivid, sort of colorful clothes. I was behaving, sort of like very nasty, kind of getting attention as a teenager, as a kind of class clown in a way, a little bit. But I was still studying a lot, and I had like very good grades. But yeah, so my #1 position was trying to get all the attention. You have to follow a certain kind of path in order to get into the circles, into the best positions in investment banking. Meaning you have to get MBAs from top universities in the world. You have to work for a few years, in some certain positions, get some certain, like qualifications, etc. And then you can be even considered for like these top positions in investment banking. Okay, and I thought I'm going to pursue all that path because that was the most. Well, it was the best paid, the highest status, area in which you could work if you wanted to be in business, and I liked finance, yeah, so I naturally liked this type of area. And once I got in, and that took me like real pain to get in, because I applied for like hundreds and hundreds of banks, like most of them or all of them except one rejected me, and the job I got was a shitty back office. If you know what a back office is, you know what a back office means? Or, yeah, okay. A shitty back office Excel rat, basically, was my job. Yeah, it was called more nicely like a graduate analyst, business, something. Yeah, but all it really meant it was like fucking Excel scrolling through spreadsheets all day long, and finding like some mistakes and if functions and stuff like that. And so that really opened my eyes to the inside of like these massive organizations where if you really want to be like this decision maker who earns like fuckloads of money, etc., you have to spend 20 years into the system, you go through a set path of how you get there, or maybe you have like, you know, billionaire daddy that just puts you in that kind of position. That's a different story, right? And so I realized it's not for me very quickly, from kind of like from day one of being in the bank. And it's very paradoxical if you think about it, because I spent basically the 3 years in university pursuing the dream of getting into one of these super investment banks, yeah, highly paid, prestigious investment banks. I got in there, I realized it's fucking shit and it's not for me.
All right. Can you tell us, one, I'm super interested about your co-founder?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the story behind you two meeting, and the second one, in regards to how did you come up with this idea?
Sure. So my co-founder Davis, we're basically best friends from 4th grade, and so
you were the classmates.
Yes, we were classmates. We studied together. Families knew each other, etc. So we were like best friends. We didn't keep that much in touch when we were in secondary school, but then afterwards we reconnected, and then, you know, so basically we've been best friends from very early on. So yeah, so we kept in touch when I was in the UK. He started doing some entrepreneurial, call it, projects here in Latvia, and we kind of like discussed, okay, like what can we do together? And you have to remember that this was when we started the business. This was, or started thinking about the business. This was 2010, 2009, 2010, which was like the aftermath of credit crunch in the Baltics and in the world, and and that only added to the difficulty of getting into investment banking, going back to the previous story. But anyway, so we were like chatting about different like random ideas. I was telling in one other presentation I did that the ideas varied from this one idea I remember distinctively. We were smoking a lot of weed, totally fucking high, and we were thinking about some great business plans and business ideas. And one of them was to bury people alive in like special coffins with oxygen access, so that they can enjoy like the extreme, you know, kind of sense that you're buried alive, but you're actually still alive, you know, and it's all safe, controlled environment in some sort of like festivals and stuff like that, right? So that was one of the genius ideas. We, thank God, we didn't pursue that one. But so going back to what I was saying, I wanted to work in private equity. I wanted to kind of like be in business that invests into companies. I realized that I'm not going to pursue this career, at least as part of another company. And I realized that in the Baltics, you know, there's no such business as VC or private equity. The funds that are here, they're mostly government funded. It's not a real business. You don't really make money there. But then I was thinking, okay, so maybe you can do it on the debt side, as in the credit. With loans, yeah, as opposed to kind of like give investments to a company and invest into equity of a business. You could maybe give a loan. And so the next step was we figured out that there's one or two small startups or companies, early stage companies, that were doing this for consumers. And the company was SMS Credits, now called For Finance, extremely unbelievably successful. Maybe Ferratum and one or two others, basically the early business companies in this industry.
Which year was it?
That was late 2009, 2010, basically. Yeah. And so we saw that these companies started and backed by people that were kind of like us, right? The original For Finance founders were also from my actually school, and so kind of it felt believable, right? And then we quickly figured out, Davis, I think, met some guys on a poker night. We realized that you could start this business with a very little capital investment. Our first, equity round, yeah, for the startup community here was 28,000 euros. That was like fucking nothing for a lending business, for a consumer credit business. It's like nothing. It's like absolutely nothing. But that got us starting. We built a website, and then in the first month we ran out of cash. That was like the beginning of the business. We ran out of cash, and then we were desperate since then for years up until recently to get ever more funding, to get more money. And that was like a constant month-end pressure to get more money to put it into the business to keep it going. Yeah? And that's why I have a particular attitude towards the hipster startup community, right? That has evolved over the last 5 years or something. where a lot of people are, or entrepreneurs, founders, yeah, they're caught up into the thinking that, you know, sort of this whole cool founder stuff is about, like, you know, cool, nice offices and these fundraising rounds and shit like that, whereas it's really not. It's really about a very, very challenging, often depressive, and kind of like, you know, demanding job, which is to build a company, right? And it's not nothing cool. It gets cool when you start making a lot of money and then people invite you to events and stuff like that. That's when it gets cool. But first years, it's like you're like, you know, you're nobody basically, yeah.
For now.
Well, I mean, first of all, we raised equity round just recently. We closed it from a big South African bank, and so our equity needs are met for some period of time.
What's the amount?
It is 21 million, yeah, let's say 21 million euros. That is invested into the company as opposed to a loan, and that's a very big difference, right? You can fairly, you know, it's a lot easier to get a 20 or whatever million loan to a company as opposed to somebody investing money in it and risk losing it. Yeah? So that's an equity investment, and so yeah, so that is obviously meeting our needs for the equity, but our needs for funding are never met as long as we're growing. We're a consumer lending business. We're a bank model, right? In essence, if we want to be bigger, every cent or every euro we want to lend extra, we need to get it from somewhere, and then we want to lend extra 2 euros, we need to get it from somewhere. So as long as we're growing, we will always need more and more capital. So it's always there. It's just more institutional, more kind of like established and mature. I mean, the traveling, a lot of traveling that has been like very intense has only appeared in the last 2.5 years. Before that, it was a lot of traveling, but it was more like, you know, let's say we had to open a Polish business, so I would go there, I would live there for like, you know, weeks in a row, come back and then go there and just do whatever it takes to make the business survive in the first place and then successful. And so, and now there's more traveling because of the fundraising, all sorts of investor relations and so on. So it's now a bit more cool, right? I don't go only to Warsaw, I go to like, you know, San Francisco or some shit like that. So that's a bit more exciting, even though at some point it gets very not exciting. And so I think, yeah, the family support is extremely important. You know, if you don't have a family that can accommodate this kind of lifestyle, then it just can't work. As for particularly my wife, she doesn't require huge amounts of attention, which is very typical for, or not typical for women, because normally women love attention. And so, you know, it works between us very well in that way. And I think we had sort of an arrangement in place, or an understanding in place from day one, that I'm like kind of like super dedicated to this ambition of mine to build a big business, and it comes at a cost, which is like less time at home, etc., etc. And so we sort of accepted that on both sides, and but it's not easy. It's not like, oh yeah, that's fine, like 10 years ago we shake hands and that's all cool. No, it's not like that. It comes at a real cost for the family, but you know, I'm aware of it. I, you know, try to kind of like invest into my closest relationships as much as possible, and I treat them as a priority over the business these days. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But and there's some side points. Obviously, the more money you make, the more you can have quality time, even though it's short. Yeah. So you don't have to come home at 5 and hold hands till night, and then do something in the night, and then, you know, repeat it the next day. Every day, you know, I can be at home like 50% or less than 50% of my time, but when I am, then I can go on a better vacation or something because I make more money. So you know, there's a side effect to it, right? So yeah, but it's not for everybody, for sure. It's totally not for everybody, and it's not like it is probably, maybe this traveling seems kind of like cool or something when you don't do it. But just as any other thing, once it becomes like your everyday life, you don't appreciate it that much. You get very tired, you start becoming extremely picky about all the traveling stuff, and you see that some airports are shitty, and you hate this plane, and you hate that, etc. But yeah, just keep it in a perspective, let's put it that way.
I see. Yeah, how would you do this? Again, from the scratch?
Okay, it's the same. I mean, I don't know. It's a good question, but the answer really is, and this is something I figured out very well, is that everybody has a different story, right? Even though we're kind of like all the same, etc., the same problems and same issues, but generally, you know, everybody has a unique set of, you know, characteristics, situation, environment, etc., etc. So the success formula is only created individually by each of us, right? You can sort of model a little bit on me, on whatever, whoever the hell you choose, on a granny or whatever, but it would be false and flawed to think that if you look at this person and how they made it and just like copy that, then I'm going to make it also. I think it's like some sort of 80s self-development, Brian Tracy type of shit, which doesn't work. And so yeah, I'd say kind of like everybody has to figure out their own, you know, track. And just, of course, if you're like super keen, then you can learn from others and get information and learn about yourself and so on and so forth. But really, it's just like, it's up to you. I have no fucking clue.
Very good.
All right.
Questions? Raise your hands. I know there should be many questions, and we got this awesome. Throw the mic, and then you can speak to this.
David?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Have you thought of selling your company and maybe starting something new? Like
Every day.
Every day. like for example, Elon Musk sold his Zip or PayPal and started his SpaceX Tesla. Have you thought of that? And if so,
I already started my like flying car startup, so I'm there. You know. Okay. Yeah, sure. Good question. I'm not a product entrepreneur or product founder. I'm not passionate or driven by the product. Yeah? I'm driven by the business scaling, relationship, people, and stuff like that. Which means usually those types of entrepreneurs like me, builders, you can call them builders. You know, we can get very excited about different types of businesses because the underlying product is not that important. So by default, these people like me that are in business, they would be more likely to do different types of businesses in their career, as opposed to the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world that are like obsessed with their product and that's kind of taken all the world, etc. And they just dedicate their lives or like their active career to the one business. So the answer is yes, and hence the answer is, have I thought about selling? Yes, but you know, the price would have to be very high. And so what to do afterwards? Today I think that I will, like, you know, whenever I sort of exit from Cream Finance, then I will just jump right into some other business. But whether that's going to be the case, if and when it happens in the future, I really actually don't know. But today I think it will be the case.
Yeah, there is the guy just in the back. Be ready. Careful.
Nice catch.
Hi. You hear a lot about to build up your company, you need to hire people.
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question. The first part would be how much of your success or the success of your company you can attribute to the employees, and what's your process for hiring good people?
Right. So the first question is all on me. It's not the employees. No, I'm kidding. Of course, the employees. It's a very good question. How to put it short, because it's a very long topic. I mean, the real game changer in a business is when you realize that you can, you know, that there are people better than you, right? It's hard to find people that are better than me, but it's possible.
Can I interrupt you a little bit
Sure.
about the mentality and mindset about being together with people who are better than you? Because that's inferiority.
Yes.
How do you describe it?
Good question. So that's the thing. I mean, with a personality type like me, it is a bit challenging. Hence, I'm a micromanager. Hence, I used to have a problem with delegation. So this is not something that has come naturally. What comes naturally for me is being the most competent guy, the number one, the most brave, etc., etc. Right? Which is sometimes necessary. In some positions in leadership, it's sometimes necessary, right? You have to be like super strict and number one, etc., and upfront and so on. But more often, it is a case of delegating, seeing the best in others, and like finding people better than you, and so on. So this is just a balance. These are contradictory, but like a balancing sort of skills and mentalities. And one of my say things that come naturally for me is really learning and seeing what works and what doesn't. So when I'm in business, and I really quickly realized that business is about having a lot of people that are better in some areas than you. And again, I figured out that that is the game. So I'm the best at then the game of finding people that are better than me. You know what I mean? You follow me? Right. So that's one. Hence, obviously, once you have that realization that you're great if you find people better than you, then that's just your focus, and that's it. And then it becomes fairly simple. Yeah. And then at some point you actually find a person that is better than you, more capable, and then you actually start believing that there are people better than you, because that was hard for me in the beginning.
Really interesting story. Thank you for sharing, and thanks for speaking English. But varbūt es runāšu latviski, man viens jautājums. Jums partners, yeah, no skola. I'm going to switch to English. You said you're a builder.
Yeah.
Would you say that, how does he complement you in the business?
Sure.
What are his sort of key attributes?
Yeah, great question. To some extent he's a builder also, but really, so we can define the differences between the two of us as, so he's more relationship focused and I'm more transaction focused. So what it means is, so for me everything is result, delivering, execute, precision, organized, money, funding, numbers, stuff like that, right? Scale, I measure everything by scale. As a builder, everything is by scale. For Davis, everything is more around how people feel in the company, motivations, relationship, culture to an extent, and things like that. Yeah? That is kind of like esoteric answer.
That's really interesting though. But one would say that you are the face of the company. You're the one doing the blogging, but you're the hardball builder behind the company. But one would think that it would be Davis if he's the sort of softer culture.
Oh, not necessarily. No, I mean not necessarily. So yeah. So because of my natural skill set, I'm better suited to be a CEO. Face of the company, I need more public recognition. I'm more, I don't know, like in the zone when I'm in front of people. So I'm more CEO-like. Yeah. I'm more formal. If you want to break down, like in terms of personality types, I'm a formal, dominant person. Typical for politicians, for CEOs, for like these sort of perceived official roles. Yeah. And informal, dominant people are usually these kind of like freestyle, free spirit people, more about relationship, the experience, right? And this kind of stuff, and so that's how it reflects, and hence by default, therefore I'm like a CEO, and Davis is not the official sort of face of the business.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. Matiss, you do blog, Twitter, where these folks can find you in the internet.
Yeah, so I have a blog called Ansviesulis.com. It's a super shitty URL name because it's very complex. I love my surname, but it's very complex, so I'll change that to something easier. It's complex for non-native speakers. So that's my main blog. I mean, you can find me anywhere, like in Google or YouTube or something. But big ups to my PR support that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind it, because it takes a lot of work. So I'm always wondering, these people that like seem to be in every conference and on every fucking Twitter, like who's doing the real job? I know that it's like you have a company to run, and then like tweeting for me is like I have to fucking put like real effort in it to open the Twitter or something, and so it's again suspicious when like cool founders or business people are like all over the social media all the time. Like, so it makes me wonder who's doing the job, who's making the money.
All right. I see. Thank you very much for coming. We had fun, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, we did, and we learned a lot. So we're gonna continue the Q&A in Latvian, in English, any other language?
Spreche kein Deutsch.
Yeah, German. So we're gonna continue this in a different space. So up there, we're gonna go there. It's another part of the building. We're gonna continue the Q&A. It's gonna be wine, red and white, I don't know. Wine, water, coffee, whatever. We continue there.
Esam draudzīgi, strādāsim un pelnīsim kopā. Будем дружны, будем работать и зарабатывать вместе.
Labākie vēlējumi līdziniekiem!